In early 2023, a single photograph taken inside a Loblaws store united the entire country in a collective state of rage. The photo showed a package of 5 boneless, skinless chicken breasts with the price tag of $37. For millions of Canadians, that sticker was the physical proof that the system no longer worked. Families were already deciding between paying rent and filling the fridge, and suddenly, a basic protein staple had been priced like a luxury good. It became the let them eat cake moment for a generation of people who were watching their purchasing power evaporate while the cost of living skyrocketed. While the public screamed, the corporation selling that $37 chicken was quietly having the best financial run of its existence. In the fourth quarter of 2024 alone, Loblaws reported revenue of nearly $15 billion. The experts and the industry lobbyists tell us that food prices are high because of global inflation. They blame broken supply chains, the war in Ukraine, and the carbon tax, telling us that the grocery business is a tough, low-margin game where nobody makes any real money. All the while, the executives are diving into their pool of money Scrooge McDuck style. So, what's happening with Loblaw? Our story begins in the early 20th century, where grocery shopping was a radically different experience. You stood at a wooden counter, handed a list to a clerk, and waited while they fetched your flour and butter from the back room. Then, in 1919, 2 men in Toronto, Theodore Loblaw and J. Milton Cork, had a disruptive idea. They opened a store where the customers picked the items they needed. They called it a groceteria. This cut out the clerk who needed to find your items for you, meaning they could slash prices and sell high-quality goods for less. The concept exploded. Theodore Loblaw became known as the Merchant Prince, building a chain of over 150 stores across Ontario and New York. Enter the Westons. George Weston was a Toronto baker who had built a small empire on bread and biscuits, but his son, Garfield Weston, possessed grander ambitions. In 1947, Garfield began quietly buying up shares of Loblaws, and by 1953, the Weston family had seized controlling interest. And for the next 50 years, they swallowed up competitors like National Grocers, Zehrs, and eventually Shoppers Drug Mart, effectively building a monolith. But as the empire grew, they faced a new problem. They were becoming too big, and they needed a way to soften their image. And that brings us to the grandson. Loblaws possessed a secret weapon that set them apart from the faceless monoliths of the retail world. Loblaws presented a human face that more or less felt like your trusty next-door neighbor, Galen Weston Jr. If you lived in Canada between 2007 and 2020, you know exactly who this is. He was the guy in the decidedly non-threatening button-up shirts walking through lush, sun-dappled fields of strawberries in Quebec. Galen Weston Jr. didn't look like a billionaire oligarch. He looked like the nice guy who lived down the street, the one who drove a sensible Volvo and really, genuinely cared about the quality of your lasagna. This resulted in a parasocial relationship with the entire country. People trusted him. Most Canadians don't realize how small their world actually is. When you walk into a competitor, like No Frills for example, you're walking into a discount brand created and owned by Loblaws. But for a long time, people simply didn't care because the prices were decent. But the mask eventually slipped, and the first indication was surprisingly about bread. In 2017, the Competition Bureau of Canada alleged that for 14 years, from late 2001 all the way to 2015, Canada's major grocers and bread bakeries had been colluding to artificially inflate the price of packaged bread.
A major investigation tonight into Canada's largest grocers. It's all in relation to an alleged price-fixing scheme involving packaged bread.
Bread is the most basic staple of human survival, the undeniable foundation of the grocery basket. Yet, for nearly a decade and a half, executives were coordinating price hikes to squeeze an extra few cents out of every loaf sold in the country. The Bureau's investigation suggested something akin to cartel behavior. When Loblaws started feeling the heat, they flipped. Loblaws and its parent company, George Weston Limited, went to the Competition Bureau and admitted their participation, securing immunity for themselves. They threw their suppliers under the bus and admitted they'd been part of a system that ripped Canadians off for 14 years. And then they offered a solution. They offered a $25 gift card.
Millions of Canadians are expected to take advantage of a free $25 gift card from the Loblaws group of companies.
The cards are a way for the grocery store chain to apologize for its role in the price fixing of bread over a period of 14 years.
Which is quite ironic given their overcharging tactics over the course of 14 years, but anyways, this was the moment the nice guy Galen avatar began to glitch. People started to realize that the friendly man in the commercials was actually running a ruthless machine. If they were willing to fix the price of bread and only give you a $25 gift card that you can only spend at their own stores, what else were they willing to do? Loblaws executives love to go on TV and tell you that their profit margins on food are historically low. Technically, if you look at the specific grocery spreadsheet, they're telling the truth. A grocery store operates on the tightest of margins. They might only keep 3 or 4 cents on every dollar of bananas sold. But the genius of the Loblaws model is that the bananas aren't the only thing they're making money on. You don't build an empire off making 3 or 4 cents on a banana. The Western Empire controls a massive entity called Choice Properties REIT. This is a real estate behemoth that owns hundreds of commercial properties across Canada. It's one of the largest landlords in the country. According to Choice Properties' own annual reports, Loblaw is their largest tenant. It represents approximately 57% of Choice Properties' rental revenue. Now, imagine Loblaws wants to raise grocery prices without looking too greedy. Well, Choice Properties can simply raise the rent. Loblaws can then turn to the public and say, "Our expenses are going up, the rent is so high, we have to raise the price of milk to survive." But who are they paying rent to? They're paying it to themselves. This is a corporate shell game. It allows the company to shift money from the low-margin grocery business, where everyone is watching the prices and the politicians are angry, to the high-margin real estate business where nobody notices the profits. When Galen Weston stands up in Parliament and says, "We only make $1 on a $25 basket of groceries," he's technically telling the truth about the grocery aisle, but is conveniently leaving out the massive rent check he basically paid himself. In the 2024 annual report for Choice Properties, they explicitly list lease surrender revenue from Loblaw and site intensification payments. Millions of dollars flow back and forth between these entities. If you believe Loblaws treats its customers with indifference, that pales in comparison to how they handle the suppliers who actually fill the shelves. This aggression spilled out into the open in early 2022 when shoppers arrived in the chip aisle to find a bizarre void where the Lay's and Doritos used to be. For weeks, the familiar brands were replaced by a sea of yellow, no-name bags. Loblaws had effectively declared war on Frito-Lay after the supplier attempted to raise prices to cover their spiking costs of fuel and ingredients.
Loblaw, the company behind Zehrs, Superstores, Provigo, No Frills, not to mention Loblaws, against another company, Frito-Lay, the maker of Cheetos, Doritos, Lay's, and Sun Chips.
In the ruthless machinery of the Canadian grocery trade, even the shelf space has a price tag. Brands have long paid listing fees just to secure eye-level placement or a spot in the weekly flyer, but the big grocers recently took this extraction to a level that defies logic. Beyond standard costs, they began inventing revenue streams like unloading fees, charging suppliers simply to take goods off the truck, and marketing contribution fees. The audacity peaked in 2020 when Loblaws unilaterally slapped suppliers with an extra 1.2% levy on all shipments, specifically to fund their own e-commerce upgrades. This led to a massive battle over a grocery code of conduct. The government and independent producers wanted a code of rules to stop big grocers from bullying suppliers. For months, Loblaws and Walmart were the holdouts. They refused to sign, claiming it would raise prices. If groceries were the only thing they controlled, it would be bad enough. But in 2013, the empire made a move that fundamentally changed the Canadian healthcare landscape. They bought Shoppers Drug Mart for $12 billion.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a seismic shift in Canada's retail landscape. The country's largest grocer and largest pharmacy are teaming up. Loblaws is buying Shoppers Drug Mart for more than $12 billion.
Suddenly, the people selling you the sugary cereal were also the people selling you the insulin. Shoppers Drug Mart was often the most accessible point of healthcare contact for millions of Canadians who didn't have a family doctor. Under the new management, the financialization of the pharmacy began. Whistleblowers have come forward to expose what's being called the meds check scandal. The Ontario government pays pharmacies to do medication reviews with patients, a service intended to make sure people are taking their pills correctly. It's supposed to be a medical necessity. Pharmacists at Shoppers have alleged that corporate headquarters set quotas on these reviews. They claimed they were being pressured to cold call patients, often people who didn't need a review, just to bill the government for the service. The acquisition of Shoppers Drug Mart gave Loblaws a stranglehold on the two most important things in your life, your food and your medicine. It also gave them access to data that no grocery store should ever have. The optimization of the consumer happens through a simple, ubiquitous mechanism: surveillance. Loblaws owns PC Optimum, arguably the most successful loyalty program in the nation, and while millions of Canadians carry the cards and dutifully scan the app to chase free groceries, people often forget that this system operates like a sophisticated surveillance tool. By tracking your purchase history, they can infer intimate details about your life with alarming accuracy. Purchasing diapers suggests a new child, while a sudden run on cough medicine signals illness, allowing them to determine if you're price sensitive or fiercely brand loyal. This data serves as the engine behind personalized pricing and targeted offers, which are designed to train you to shop exclusively within their walls. The scenario turns genuinely dystopian when you layer the grocery data on top of the pharmacy records. Loblaws possesses a view into your life that even the government lacks, effectively connecting your weekly diet directly to your prescription history. This information dominance makes it nearly impossible for competitors to keep up, because Loblaws knows exactly what price will trigger a sale, and more importantly, they've mathematically quantified exactly how much pain you can tolerate before you walk away. Loblaws realized they needed a safety net to catch the shoppers falling out of the middle class. As inflation soared and Canadians began running out of money, the company executed a massive strategic pivot, rapidly converting full-service locations into discount warehouses. But a closer look at the operational mechanics reveals a starker reality. When a full-service store is downgraded to a discount model, the service counters vanish, the skilled butchers and bakers are often let go, and the entire labor model is gutted to reduce overhead, all while the product selection significantly drops. The most sophisticated element of this shell game is the no-name brand itself. Although that iconic yellow packaging is designed to scream cheap, eagle-eyed shoppers have noticed the price gap shrinking in recent years as those discount products quietly creep upward, drafting just cents behind the national brands. Loblaws has effectively trained the public to accept lower quality and reduced service while simultaneously raising the price floor, a strategy that allows them to capture the market on both ends, whether you have the disposable income for the premium experience at Loblaws City Market or are forced by budget constraints into the aisles of No Frills. For years, the Canadian public simply absorbed the rising costs, paralyzed by a national politeness that defaults to grumbling quietly while paying the bill. People engaged in survival shopping, holding on to the desperate hope that next week might be cheaper, until the collective patience finally snapped in 2024. It started with a subreddit called r/Loblaws is out of control, which initially served as a digital venting ground for posting photos of $12 butter and $9 chips. As the group swelled to tens of thousands of members, they began sharing tactical tips on independent grocers and exposing price discrepancies, culminating in the launch of a nationwide boycott in May 2024. The uprising transformed into a tangible movement where people cancelled their PC Optimum cards, transferred their prescriptions to independent pharmacies, and actively drove out of their way to support competitors like Giant Tiger and local markets. Although Loblaws attempted to dismiss the unrest, with Galen Weston appearing at the annual general meeting to label the criticism misguided while recycling the standard talking points about thin margins and global inflation, the strategy failed to stick this time. The PR damage proved irreversible as steal from Loblaws memes began circulating, signaling a complete fracture of the social contract. When the public begins to frame shoplifting as an act of Robin Hood-style justice rather than a crime, the brand has lost the moral high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Before we continue, we need to address something first. Galen Weston stepped down from the day-to-day operations and he brought in a new CEO, a man named Per Bunk. Per Bunk is a Danish retail veteran and his job is to clean up the mess and fix the PR disaster. Since taking over, he's been on a charm offensive. He signed the Grocery Code of Conduct and ended the restrictive property covenants. But it has to be asked, is this a real change or is it just a new coat of paint? The structural problems remain. The REIT still exists, and the vertical integration and market dominance are still here. The shareholders still demand growth, and the only way to get that growth in a saturated market is to squeeze someone. If they can't squeeze the suppliers anymore because of the code of conduct, and they can't squeeze the real estate because of the bureau, who's left to squeeze? If the current trends persist, the future of the food system appears starkly divided. The market is bifurcating into two distinct realities: a premium experience for the wealthy and a discount experience for everyone else. While Loblaws is aggressively positioning itself to dominate both ends of this spectrum, a third option is quietly emerging from the margins. The independent grocer, the local butcher, and the direct-to-consumer farm box, options once dismissed as expensive luxuries, are making a significant comeback. Ironically, as the corporate giants raise their floor prices, these local alternatives are becoming surprisingly competitive. In many cases, the local butcher is now cheaper than the supermarket. This stands as the ultimate irony of the Loblaws story. By pushing prices so high, the corporation may have accidentally revived its own competition, pushing the consumer so hard that the market finally woke up and shoppers are starting to realize that food supply chains don't require corporate intermediaries. Now, we've all heard the constant claim of inflation and that they're merely passing the costs on to the consumers. It's finally time to dissect that defense once and for all. While Loblaws consistently argues that if the price of wheat rises, the price of bread must naturally follow, data from the Center of Future Work tells a different story. Their analysis reveals that grocery profits accelerated significantly faster than the general rate of inflation, a phenomenon economists have termed greedflation or seller's inflation. The mechanism is quite simple really. The widespread inflation provides a perfect cover. If supply expenses rise by 5%, a retailer can raise prices by 8% without triggering immediate outrage because the consumer is already bracing for financial pain. That extra 3% represents pure profit, a skim off the top. Loblaws effectively used the global crisis as a smokescreen, hiding behind the chaos of the early 2020s, banking on the assumption that the average shopper wouldn't do the math. So, where does this leave the average Canadian consumer? Well, Loblaws have successfully constructed a moat around their empire by owning the supply chain to dictate costs, holding the real estate to obscure true profitability, controlling the pharmacy network to bill the government, and mining data to manipulate purchasing habits. The cracks, however, are beginning to show. With the consumer base organized and angry, the narrative is shifting. For 50 years, the brand sold the idea that they were Canada's store, a partner in daily life. Yet, a company can only charge $37 for chicken breasts so many times before the population realizes that Canada's store isn't all what it cracked up to be. Ultimately, the shopper must ask, are they a valued customer or merely an extraction point? But what's your take on the situation? Is the boycott working? Have you found a way to escape the Loblaws ecosystem, or are you stuck? And seriously, what's the most insane price tag you've seen lately? Make sure to drop it in the comments below. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope to catch you in the next video.